There is a certain kind of person who walks into a meeting room, and the entire group instinctively stops talking and turns to listen. They do not raise their voice. They do not fight for attention. They simply sit down, and somehow, the chair they occupy suddenly carries weight. But you are the opposite. You are halfway through a sentence when someone interrupts you, and you go silent. Someone cancels on you at the last minute for the third time, and you reply, "It is okay." Someone turns you into the joke in front of a crowd, and you laugh along just to keep the atmosphere from becoming uncomfortable. The same room, the same people, yet they treat the two of you in completely different ways. And here is what almost no one is willing to tell you directly. The disrespect you are receiving is not happening because you are incapable. It comes from something far more subtle. You are unconsciously doing something that sends a signal to other people, telling them that they are allowed to treat you badly. You are not doing it intentionally, but they read that signal as clearly as they would read a sign placed directly in front of them. And here is the paradox. The harder you try to earn respect, the more you send signals that cause people to disrespect you. You explain yourself to prove that you are right, and people become even more doubtful of you. You react aggressively to defend yourself, and people realize that they have the power to get under your skin. Respect is not something you gain by trying harder. It is something that appears naturally when you stop doing the 4 things that are quietly making you look weak. I used to be the second person in that room. I was, quite literally, a doormat. Then I discovered that I had been sending these 4 signals of weakness, and everything changed far faster than I ever imagined. Let us begin with the easiest signal to fix, because it is the doorway to the other 3. The first signal is hidden in the way you react whenever someone says something that strikes at your pride. Think back to the last time someone made a sarcastic remark about you in front of a group. Your heart started beating faster, your face grew hot, and in less than a second, you did one of 2 things. You either became angry, raised your voice, and started fighting back, or you rushed to explain yourself, trying to prove that what they said was not true and that they had misunderstood you. Although these reactions appear completely opposite, they both communicate the same message to the other person. They tell them that they have reached you. They tell them that their words have power, and people will repeat anything that gives them a sense of power. The bigger your reaction, the more clearly you hand them the button they can press to control your emotions whenever they want. Neuroscience has demonstrated this very clearly. When you are insulted, the amygdala, the part of the brain involved in processing threats, activates almost instantly. It pushes you into a defensive state before the rational part of your mind has time to respond. Most people spend their entire lives trapped in this reflex without realizing it. They believe that reacting aggressively is a way of protecting themselves. In reality, it is how they surrender control. So what do respected people do differently? They do not swallow their anger and pretend that everything is fine. That is another trap, because the silence of someone who is enduring mistreatment and the silence of someone who is powerful may look identical, but they come from completely opposite places. Respected people do something so simple that almost no one expects it. They look directly into the eyes of the person who has just insulted them. They say one short, clear sentence without emotion. That was disrespectful. Then they stop. They do not explain further. They do not complain. They do not ask, "Why would you say something like that?" They simply name the behavior that just occurred and allow the silence to do the rest. And this is when something strange happens. That silence places the full weight of the moment back onto the shoulders of the person who made the remark. When you do not react emotionally, there is no argument for them to hide behind. There is no emotional outburst for them to enjoy. They are left alone with their own behavior, exposed in the middle of a silent room. And that feeling is extremely uncomfortable for them. I once had a friend who constantly made jokes about my job. Whenever our group gathered, he would eventually say something like, "Oh look, the waiter has arrived." For years I laughed along. I told myself I was easygoing and that I knew how to take a joke. But every time I laughed, I was signing a permission slip, allowing him to do it again. Then one day, I decided to stop signing it. The next time he made the same familiar joke, I did not laugh. I looked directly at him and said 3 words. That was disrespectful. Then I remained silent. The entire table went quiet for several seconds, but it felt like a full minute. He became uncomfortable and apologized immediately. He never made that joke again. It did not work because those 3 words possessed some kind of magic. It worked because I refused to participate in his game. The game played by people who enjoy putting others down requires only one kind of fuel: your reaction. When you stop providing the fuel, the fire goes out on its own. You do not need to win the argument. You only need to refuse to participate in it. Pay attention to one important detail. The power is not contained in the sentence itself. It is contained in the silence that follows it. Most people cannot tolerate silence. They find it uncomfortable, so they rush to fill it with explanations, nervous laughter, or words designed to smooth everything over. And that attempt to fill the silence ruins everything. You must learn to tolerate silence. You must allow it to continue long enough for the other person to become uncomfortable instead of you. The person who controls the silence controls the room. This is also where the darker side of this signal appears, and you need to be honest with yourself about it. The sentence, "That was disrespectful," is a sharp knife, and sharp knives cut in both directions. When you use it in response to every minor disagreement, every accidental remark, and every genuinely harmless joke, you do not become powerful. You become unapproachable, someone everyone feels nervous around whenever they speak. There is a fine line between protecting your dignity and turning yourself into a bomb that could explode at any moment. The difference is this: powerful people use this tool selectively, only when a genuine boundary has been crossed. They do not search for insults in every sentence so that they can find a reason to react. That selectiveness is what gives the statement its weight. When you say it 10 times a day, it loses all its power. It becomes like a fire alarm that rings so often that eventually no one bothers to pay attention. Save it for the moments when it is truly necessary. And remember that the final objective is not to make people afraid of you. The objective is to make them understand that you have a boundary, and that the boundary is real. When you master this first signal, something interesting begins to happen within you. You realize that you do not need to raise your voice to be heard. You do not need to prove anything to be respected. You only need one calm sentence, and a silence strong enough to stand on its own. For the first time, you begin to understand where real power actually lives. It does not live in anger. It lives in a calmness that other people cannot disturb. By this point, you know how to respond when someone insults you directly. But there is another form of disrespect that is far more subtle and far quieter. It concerns the most valuable thing you possess, even though you may not realize it: your time, and the way you give it away. Answer one question honestly. How long does it take you to reply when someone sends you a message? When the answer is almost immediately, at every hour and for every person, you have just discovered a signal of weakness that you may be sending every day. When you are always instantly available, you unintentionally teach people a lesson. You teach them that your time has no value. You teach them that they can reach you whenever they want, and that you will always be standing by, ready to respond. And people rarely appreciate something that is always available and completely free. This is a psychological principle demonstrated through countless studies on scarcity. The easier something is to obtain, the lower its perceived value becomes. The more difficult something is to access, the more valuable people assume it must be. Think about doctors. Why do they make you sit in a waiting room? It is not necessarily because they are arrogant. It is because their time is arranged according to their own schedule. You adjust to them, not the other way around. The fact that you must wait sends a signal to your brain that this person's time is valuable. That is part of the reason you respect them. Now think about someone who is always free, always replies immediately, and is always available for every request at every hour. Do you genuinely value that person's time? Deep down, perhaps you do not. Not because they are a bad person, but because they are behaving as though their own time is worthless. The solution is not to play games by intentionally making people wait so that you can appear important. That is another mistake many people make after hearing this advice. They deliberately delay their responses in order to perform the role of a busy person, but it creates a false feeling that other people can recognize immediately. The real solution is much deeper. You must genuinely build a life that does not revolve around serving your phone. When someone sends you a message, you do not need to reply within 2 minutes every single time. You leave the message where it is. You continue living your life, and you respond when you are available. When someone calls, you do not always need to answer immediately. You call them back when you are ready. Most importantly, when someone asks you to do something, do not immediately say yes. Say, "Let me check, and I will get back to you." That small sentence changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. I used to respond to every message within seconds. People sent me messages at 11 o'clock at night because they knew with certainty that I would reply. They asked me for favors with the assumption that I would agree immediately without thinking. They treated my time like garbage because I was treating it like garbage. Then I changed. I began creating a space before responding. I started saying, "I will get back to you," instead of immediately nodding or refusing. And something strange happened. People began asking, "Do you have time?" instead of automatically demanding it. They began saying, "Thank you for making the time," instead of treating my availability as something guaranteed. I did not become more difficult. I simply stopped giving away my most valuable resource without conditions. There is a truth that very few people are willing to admit. Time is the only possession you can never recover. Money that is lost can be earned again. An hour that has been given away is gone forever. When you behave as though you understand this, other people are forced to understand it as well. When you scatter your time everywhere for anyone who calls your name, you silently announce that it is not valuable. But this is where the darker side of this signal appears, and you must be especially careful. The line between valuing yourself and becoming distant or cold is extremely thin. When you misuse the principle of scarcity, when you make people wait simply because you want to appear important, you do not create respect. You create walls. The people who genuinely care about you begin to feel pushed away. The people you love begin to feel that they are no longer a priority. At that point, you have traded connection for an illusion of power. The difference lies in your motive. You manage your availability not to manipulate the emotions of other people, but to protect your energy and attention for the things that truly deserve them. When someone genuinely needs you during an emergency, you are still present immediately and without hesitation. What you remove is your uncontrolled availability for unnecessary demands, not your presence for the people and responsibilities that truly matter. You must clearly distinguish between those two things. One is self-respect, the other is self-isolation, and confusing them can be dangerous. When you understand the second signal correctly, the quality of your relationships begins to change. People approach you with greater preparation and appreciation, and you discover a beautiful paradox. The more you value your own time, the more meaningful time you have available for the people who truly matter. The first two signals help you manage how other people touch your pride and how you give away your time. But there is something that can eat away at you from the inside, something even more dangerous than those two things combined. It does not come from a sharp insult or an obvious moment of disrespect. It comes from the moments when you remain silent, even though you should speak. Most people accept mistreatment for one reason. They are afraid of conflict. Someone treats them badly, and they choose to swallow it because speaking feels uncomfortable. They are afraid of damaging the relationship. They are afraid of being labeled difficult. But here is what that fear hides from you. When you accept mistreatment once, you are not merely enduring it once. You are teaching the other person that they are allowed to do it again. You have established a precedent. You have shown them that their behavior carries no cost, and people will repeat any behavior that carries no consequences. Your silence does not purchase peace. It purchases more repetitions of the very behavior that is hurting you. The real price is not the uncomfortable moment that occurs when you speak. The real price appears months later, when resentment has accumulated inside you little by little, like water dripping into a glass until one day it overflows. And when it overflows, it rarely happens gently. It explodes, often at the wrong person, at the wrong time, because of something small and insignificant. Or worse, it never flows outward at all. It turns inward, and you begin to hate yourself for being too weak to protect yourself. That is the highest price of all. So what is the solution? You must speak at the moment the harmful behavior occurs. Do not hold it inside, and plan to discuss it later. Do not replay the moment in your head hundreds of times, imagining all the things you should have said. Address it immediately, calmly, and clearly. When a friend cancels on you at the last minute again, do not say, "It is okay." Say, "This is the third time you have cancelled at the last minute. This is not acceptable." When a colleague takes credit for work you completed, name it immediately. "I completed that part of the project." Please make sure the correct person receives the credit. When a family member makes a cruel remark about your life, stop them. "I do not appreciate comments like that." Please stop. Do not be aggressive. Do not be bitter. Be clear and direct. Most people are afraid to do this because they believe it will create trouble. But ask the question in reverse. Which creates greater trouble? Remaining silent and allowing resentment to grow for months until you eventually explode, or making one direct statement in the moment and resolving the issue before it has time to become larger? I once had a colleague who pushed his work onto me every week. His usual line was, "Could you quickly take care of this for me?" And I did it because I did not want to be seen as difficult. It continued for months. Then one day, I stopped. He asked me to complete his work again. I said, "No, that is your responsibility. I am not doing it." He reacted and tried to pressure me. I remained firm. No meant no. He stopped asking. He began completing his own work. The surprising part was that after this happened, he respected me more than he had before. Here is a truth about human psychology that very few people expect. People respect boundaries, even when their first reaction is to resist them. When you establish a boundary for the first time, there will usually be pushback. Do not mistake that reaction for failure. It is a test. They are trying to discover whether your boundary is real or whether it is merely an empty statement. When you remain firm, they learn that it is real and they adjust their behavior. When you show someone that you will not accept mistreatment, only two outcomes are possible. They either change the way they treat you or they leave. And this is the liberating part. Both outcomes benefit you. The person who stays and respects you is worth keeping. The person who leaves because they are no longer allowed to disrespect you is someone you do not need. But the darker side of this signal must be discussed seriously, because this is the signal most likely to be misunderstood. There is an enormous difference between establishing boundaries and becoming rigid, aggressive, and constantly prepared for battle. Refusing to tolerate harmful behavior does not mean refusing to tolerate ordinary human mistakes. Everyone occasionally acts without thinking. Everyone forgets things. Everyone sometimes does something hurtful without malicious intent. When you treat every small mistake as a violation that demands a response, you are not protecting your dignity. You are turning yourself into someone whose presence creates tension, someone around whom everyone feels that they must walk on eggshells. The difference is this: healthy boundaries protect you from behavior that is genuinely harmful and repeatedly occurring. They are not a net designed to catch every mistake another person makes. Truly powerful people know the difference between an accidental mistake that deserves forgiveness and a deliberate pattern that must be stopped. They respond to the first with generosity and to the second with firmness. Most importantly, the purpose of a boundary is not to punish another person or win a battle. Its purpose is to protect your inner peace. When you speak from a place of calmness and clarity rather than anger or hatred, your boundary possesses genuine strength. It does not create enemies. It creates respect. When you master this third signal, you experience a profound change. Resentment no longer accumulates inside you because you address situations when they occur. You feel lighter, you sleep better, and you no longer replay imaginary conversations in your mind, wishing that you had been more courageous. The first three signals concern the way you interact with other people, but the final signal is completely different. It is the most powerful signal and the most difficult one to change, because it does not exist in your behavior toward the outside world. It exists in the relationship between you and your own sense of worth, and it is the deepest root of almost every form of disrespect you have ever received. Observe this carefully. Most people move through life carrying a silent and exhausting effort. They are constantly trying to prove that they are good enough. Someone questions their idea, and they immediately launch into a 5-minute explanation of why they are right. Someone expresses doubt about them, and they begin listing every achievement they have ever earned, every qualification they possess, and every piece of evidence that proves their value. They believe that the more they explain, the more people will believe them. But the truth is cruelly opposite. The attempt to explain is itself the signal. It tells other people that you do not believe you are good enough. A person who genuinely knows their own value never feels a desperate need to defend it. They simply possess that value, and the people around them can feel it. Consider this paradox. The harder you try to prove something, the more clearly you reveal that you also doubt it. Someone who is confident in a decision does not need to provide 10 separate reasons. Someone who is certain of their own value does not need to read their list of achievements aloud. Certainty does not speak excessively. It radiates. Observe the people you know who are genuinely confident. When someone questions them, they do not immediately become defensive. They say one short sentence, "I am comfortable with my decision," or "I know what I am doing." That is all. No extended explanation, no evidence, only calm, steady certainty. When someone attempts to make them feel small, they do not pull out their achievements as a form of protection. They smile and continue along their path. To them, their worth is not a subject for debate. This used to be my greatest problem. Whenever someone questioned me, I told them my entire life story. I have actually done this before, and this is why I know what I am talking about. The more I explained, the less people trusted me. Then I stopped. During one meeting, someone questioned one of my ideas. The old version of me would have spent 10 minutes defending it. The new version of me said one sentence, "I believe this is the right move." That was all. No evidence, no extended presentation, and they agreed to follow the idea. Why? Because confidence is contagious. When you behave as though you deserve respect, people begin to believe it. When you behave as though you still need to earn it, people will force you to continue earning it forever. Your value is not something you must prove, it is something you possess. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your choices. You do not owe anyone evidence of your worth. You only need to exist. That is enough. Begin behaving accordingly. The next time someone questions you, do not explain yourself until you are exhausted. Simply say, "I am confident about this," or "This is the right choice for me." Then observe how quickly people stop questioning you. But this is where the darker side of the final signal appears, and it is subtle enough to become dangerous. There is an extremely thin line between quiet confidence and deaf arrogance. When you stop feeling the need to prove yourself, you face a new risk. You may also stop listening. You may confuse refusing to over-explain yourself with refusing to reconsider anything. The fact that your human worth does not need to be proven does not mean that every decision you make is automatically correct. A truly mature person understands the difference between two completely separate ideas. The first is that you do not need to defend your worth as a human being against every question. The second is that you remain willing to listen to valid feedback and change when necessary. A person with healthy confidence does not explain themselves in order to beg for approval, but they still listen in order to learn. The difference lies in the reason behind the silence. When you remain silent because you are secure in your worth, that is strength. When you remain silent because you believe you are above all criticism, that is the beginning of arrogance. And arrogance, ironically, is another form of weakness wearing a disguise. A genuinely powerful person is not afraid of valid criticism. They are secure enough to receive it without feeling that their value has been threatened. Remember this. The objective is not to become someone who never listens to anyone. The objective is to become someone who does not require anyone's approval in order to know that they possess value. Those are two completely different things. When you understand that subtle difference, you reach the highest form of confidence. A confidence strong enough that it does not need to defend itself, yet humble enough that it never stops growing. Now step back and look at these 4 signals from a distance, because this is what no one told you directly from the beginning. Stop overreacting. Stop being instantly available. Stop silently accepting mistreatment. Stop trying to prove your worth. Did you notice that all 4 begin with the same word? Stop, not begin, not add. Stop. This is the central truth that almost every piece of advice overlooks. You do not need to learn another skill. You do not need to read another book, take another course, or become a completely different person. Respect is not something you add to yourself. It appears naturally when you remove the layers that are making you look weak. Think of it this way. The strong, respected person you want to become has already existed within you for a very long time. You are not missing that person. You have simply covered that person with 4 old habits: emotional overreaction, unconditional availability, silent endurance, the obsession with proving yourself. Remove those 4 layers, and what remains is not a new version of you. It is the real version of you, the version that deserved respect from the very beginning, but remained hidden for so long that even you forgot it existed. So here is what you need to do right now. Do not try to change all 4 habits at once, because you will give up before you have the chance to see any results. Choose one, only one. Choose the one that feels easiest to begin with. Perhaps it is calmly naming disrespect with one clear sentence, and then remaining silent. Perhaps it is saying, "Let me check first," the next time someone asks you for something, instead of immediately agreeing. Either choice is fine. What matters is that you do it once, today, in the next real situation that appears. Catch yourself, just as you are about to follow the old habit. Then stop. Choose the new response instead, and watch the expression on the other person's face change. Do it again tomorrow, then do it again the day after that. Within 1 week, it will begin to feel natural. Within 1 month, you will be practicing all 4 without having to think about them. And by that point, the way people see you will have changed completely. Not because you became a different person, but because you stopped doing the things that made you appear small. The same person, different behavior, a completely reversed result. And this is the final thing I want you to carry with you. Read it slowly. You have spent far too long waiting for something you never needed to wait for. Permission. You have been silently waiting for someone to confirm that you deserve respect before you allow yourself to behave as though you deserve it. But the truth is that no one is coming to hand you that permission. You do not need it. You were already worthy from the beginning. The only thing left to do is begin behaving as though you know it. Do not wait for permission to be respected. Begin now.